reform.
All right, so some crucial reforms on the table. We're going to get into the specifics of what we can do right now, and that's the sort of typical situation we find ourselves in. We want big change, which we can't implement tomorrow, but we can do some things today. And for that, I want to go to Tate Hausman, who's joining us from Columbus, Ohio. Tate is out there. He's one of the campaign managers for Vote Today Ohio. He was right here in the studio a few weeks back. Now he's on the road. Tate, tell us what's been going on with early voting in Ohio and just what kind of a mood there is in the streets there today. We may have lost Tate. Well, let me come to you, Steve. You were recently in Ohio. I think you were there yesterday. The mood probably hasn't changed all that much.
No, it probably hasn't changed that much. In fact, I was there yesterday, and I was there when Tate and a number of other groups were actually doing the same thing, which was they were bringing vans. They were taking vans and going into different neighborhoods where there were targeted populations, people who basically were the ones who waited in long lines in 2004, and it was a well-coordinated operation. Some groups were going to homeless shelters, some groups were going to college campuses, some groups had Tate's group was going to college campuses. I believe they had teams going to 7 campuses throughout the state, and there were other groups that were focusing in neighborhoods where there were basically minority voters who had been disenfranchised, and they had been working with them through the registration process. And what I saw, the Deputy Director of Elections in Franklin County, which is Columbus, predicted 500 people would come in when I spoke to him at noon. And when I went back there at 7 o'clock at night on Monday, or Tuesday rather, there were 800 and something people who all these folks had brought in. So the turnout is high, and there was almost nobody there that doing the same kind of effort on behalf of what would be likely Republican voters.
Interesting. Demos, what kind of concerns do you have about what's going down in Ohio? Is there anything that you can see already there in this first week of early voting, this golden week, that speaks to your continuing concerns between now and November 4th?
Well, what we saw earlier this week was litigation. The Ohio GOP went to court to try to block a law in Ohio which allowed a 5-day window, which started today, during which you could both register and vote absentee. The GOP went to court in 2 federal courts and state court. They lost in all 3 of them. The good news is that people in Ohio today can both register and vote for this 5-day period. We've seen, unfortunately, the GOP resort to litigation to try to block people's opportunity to participate. That's the kind of thing we'll continue to see around.
Who joined you in that lawsuit? Is that a success story for grassroots groups and national rights groups?
Well, it was a success for national voting rights groups. It was a success for the Ohio Secretary of State, for the Democratic Party, and for the voters.
Sam, tell us about your project Vote Pact. Tell us about how it works. And how can we participate?
I think that there are tons of people out there who, they feel like they got to vote for Obama because they really don't want McCain, even though they might disagree with Obama on a whole lot of issues and agree more with Cynthia McKinney or Ralph Nader or any other third-party candidate. Meanwhile, there are people who are the exact mirror image, people who feel like they got to vote for McCain even though they really don't like McCain because they really don't want Obama for whatever reason. And what I'm saying is that a lot of these people know each other. A lot of these people trust each other. A lot of these people are family members, friends, whatever. We all have people in our lives who we might avoid talking about politics with precisely because we don't want to seem disagreeable and such. Well, I'm saying we should live in a healthier society where we can talk to those people, and I'm proposing a voting strategy whereby people can actually use that to their advantage. To say, okay, I'll vote for the third-party candidate of my choice if you vote for the third-party candidate of your choice, so that you're siphoning off votes in 2s from the 2 establishment parties to the third-party candidates of your choice.
So has this ever been tried before?
I've proposed it before. It hasn't quite taken off. I think that this year is a little bit different in that you had the Ron Paul phenomena, and he's gone out on a limb and said vote third parties. I suggest Chuck Baldwin of the Constitution Party, but he's boosted third parties generally. And you have this unprecedented situation where you have this collapse, if we're to believe it, on the financial system, and you have this stark contrast between the Main Street factions in Congress from both parties as opposed to the Wall Street factions in both parties.
So you mean you could see some of the voters who were calling into Congress over last weekend,
Right.
From right and from left, teaming up and saying, well, I'll vote for Ron Paul if you vote for Ralph Nader or Cynthia McKinney.
Exactly. They could both conceivably, I mean, it would be an exponential strategy if they would both vote for the same third-party candidate. That might be unlikely, but they can certainly vote for separate third-party candidates. And I think it would not only jolt the system if this spread via the internet and via other mechanisms, because the establishment media don't want this, I don't think. But it also leads to a healthier culture, so that you can talk to politics people that you avoid talking.
So what I like about this story is that it's an idea, it's somebody's idea to try to figure out how do we get around these big problems that we haven't figured out how to resolve between the last election and this one.
And you don't need permission. This isn't a reform that we're begging the government to do. It's something anybody can do.
Great example of consumer activism. Let me come to you, Steve. What other kind of initiatives do you see out there, and what kind of initiatives would you encourage people to sign up for, to participate in?
Well, there are plenty of other things to do, and I did some research on this, by the way, your thing. And apparently there was an August 2007 U.S. Court of Appeals decision, Ninth Circuit, that said that it's constitutional. It's a First Amendment choice, because it was actually tried in 2004, and a lot of states said, no, you can't do that because it's a state rights thing. And so anyway,
he's on good legal grounds.
So he's on good legal grounds.
Other initiatives.
So, which is I was surprised to see that, by the way. So other initiatives. Well, okay, everybody just must make sure that their friends, their family, and their community, that their voter registrations are current. Sure. That's not a change the world strategy, but the thing is, the close of registration begins this coming weekend. And I'm not going to bore you with a million reasons why, but most of the things that can go wrong that have partisan seeds where people can be challenged, it all comes down to saying that you don't live on where you're the address on your voter registration form. So you got to call your local election official. And just
so for people who are watching this after the close of voting, which is October 6th, October 10th, in a lot of states.
Okay, so then what happens is it depends on your level of interest. If you want to work inside the parties, you know, either party, but it turns out that I think the Obama campaign is much more developed on this than the Republican campaign. There are field operations, there are election protection efforts. You go to your county organization, you ask, what do you need? What do you help? The Democratic Party did this extensive, but not extensive enough, survey of the landscape. At every county level, you find out where are the holes and how they need to be plugged. But there are other independent efforts that people are doing. In Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and in Missouri, Steve Friedman, who is a professor at University of Pennsylvania, he's doing an independent exit poll. They're not trying to figure out who won. They're trying to figure out if the results that are being reported are accurate. Because the media consortium that's doing exit polling is not going to release raw numbers. So that's the equivalent of basically it's the equivalent of, a electronic vote that's inside a computer chip. That's not an actual thing.
But what about monitoring the actual election? What can people do? We've got about 30 seconds left. I need to get both of you in here.
Well, what they can do is they can coordinate with election protection groups and see what are the weak links in their states that really need to be looked at.
If I could
Stephen?
jump in, there's again this year, and the largest in history, there's over 100 organizations that banded together in a national election protection effort. 866-HOUR-VOTE. It's a website, 866-HOUR-VOTE. It's also a hotline number. So folks can volunteer to monitor the polls to make sure that the votes get counted, that the people don't get challenged improperly, that dirty tricks don't go on. There's a lot of work that I volunteer every election cycle that a lot of other people can get involved in. And the 866-HOUR-VOTE is the means to do so.
All right. The number is 866-HOUR-VOTE. It's just one of a lot of initiatives. We'll have some links at our website. What I personally would love would be for some folks to go out there as GRITtv election protection monitors with good video cameras and bring us some footage of what happens on the poll. So if you want to sign up to do that, write to us, GRITtv at GRITtv.org. I want to thank everybody for the work that they're doing and will continue to do between now and November 4th and then onwards to transform our election system. Steve Rosenfeld, thanks so much for your book, Count My Vote, A Citizen's Guide to Voting. Stephen Carbo from Demos, thanks for coming in. Thanks for your initiative, Sam. We look forward to hearing more about Voter Pact.
Vote Pact.
VotePact.org, VotePact.org, and there are links at our website. All of you, thanks so much. There's more coming up right here on GRITtv.